Desert Oracle Radio, the voice of the desert.
Night has fallen on the desert. Let's get right to it. Let's go to Arizona. Headed out from Kingman toward Flagstaff on Interstate 40, you drive through some of the prettiest parts of Arizona, up that long grade up toward Prescott, Sedona, Flagstaff. The Grand Canyon is about 100 miles north. The weather is fine this time of year. Here's how the Channel 12 News in Phoenix began the story Thursday, April 18 on the 10 o'clock news. With the father of the missing toddler saying to the camera, "God sent that dog to rescue my son." The words spoken by the 2-year-old boy's father, Corey Allen, outside the family's home on the west side of rural Seligman, Arizona. Corey Allen says he was working on the roof. Sarah Allen was inside with their 1-year-old. And 2-year-old Bodin Allen went outside to play, as we rural people still let our kids do. Sort of the point. You can hear them through the screen doors, see them 10 feet away. A 2-year-old does not wander far from home when you've got acreage. When you don't have to worry about cars speeding by 6 feet away from the front door, a 2-year-old can't wander too far from home. They'll make it about 100 yards on a walk or a hike. And then they either sit in the dirt or go in a circle or want something to eat or drink, and then you're carrying them again. When Bodin Allen's mom called for him, he did not answer. He wasn't there. You don't panic when this happens, not at first. There's a big piece of property, those big round Arizona junipers rising up on the dry hills. Lots of little nooks and big rocks for a toddler to hide within or behind. We sometimes forget being adults with bills to pay and social media to make us insane. How big and beautiful the world is when you're a little kid outside. Maybe with a couple of toy robots, dolls, soldiers, stuffed animals, some little buddy. But they could not find their kid. And after an hour of frantic searching as the sky darkened, the Allens called the Yavapai Sheriff's Department, and before long there were dozens of search and rescue volunteers and deputies searching the area. Helicopters with spotlights scoured the plateau. The pilots reporting 2 mountain lions prowling the territory. And so the search went on for hours, all night long. And by morning, news of the missing boy had been announced by the sheriff's department, broadcast by the local news, spread around by neighbors and radio and the internet, so that a rancher named Scotty Dunton, 7 long miles away in the backcountry to the west, had already heard before he got in his pickup and headed to town about 7:30 a.m. And he saw his big old ranch dog, Buford the Anatolian Pyrenees, coming up the dirt driveway with a blonde-headed toddler by his side. A blonde-headed toddler in dirty pajamas, eyes red from crying, and with a few scratches from the high desert brush on one arm and on his face. But otherwise alive and well. a miracle. Well, let's quote from the article posted by NBC News. "I knew it was him," Dutton said. "He was all disoriented and crying, and so I jumped out and ran and grabbed him and told him, 'You're okay, you're okay.' And took him inside and got him some water and food. But he calmed down pretty quick and turned back into a 2-year-old. When Dutton asked the boy whether he had walked all night, the boy said no, and kept saying, 'Tree, tree,' Dutton recalled. Dutton says he asked the boy, 'You laid down under a tree? Did my dog find you?' And he said, 'Yeah. That's what happened. That's the news story."
Desert Oracle Radio.
Scotty Dutton added, "There's people saying there's no way he made it that far, and something's fishy about this story, and I physically went and found his little foot tracks." End quote. Not for 7 miles, though. Scotty Dutton says he was able to follow his dog's big paw prints and the little boy's footsteps for about a mile. Well, what about the other 6 miles of rugged desert wilderness at night and 40-degree weather? What about the 700-foot-high broad mesa that rises up just beyond Seligman, that you'd have to get up and over to reach Dutton's ranch 7 miles to the west? Over a mountain range that Route 66 avoids by turning hard to the northwest, a tall tableland that would not be breached by Interstate 40 to the south until half a century after Route 66. The pictures on the Arizona Central News story show Buford hanging out with the barn cat and also sleeping with a black lamb named Lil Bit on the straw. Clearly a natural babysitter, or bred to be that, as those Pyrenees are, a natural protector. Rancher Scotty Dutton says Buford sleeps most of the day and patrols the property by night, keeping the coyotes and cougars away from the farm animals. Seligman, or Seligman, by the way, calls itself the birthplace of Route 66, a big sign right there as you enter the little town. Looking for the gas station, looking for something to eat, a cold beer. Is the Black Cat open yet? It's world famous. They got an ATM in there and 6 packs to go, too. And you'll find the historic Seligman Sundries, an old-school roadside tourist shop. Plastic Route 66 signs and Indian jewelry and everything. They used to have an Elvis Presley statue in there. I don't know if it's still around. They had some UFO postcards and a UFO license on the wall, too. What about that? Take the old 66, and that brings you to Grand Canyon Caverns to the northwest, America's largest dry cave system. You used to be able to take an elevator down into the caves, but I heard there were some problems. I heard there's a ghost down there, too, which is why some people would want to stay in the cave hotel room down there. Personally, I like the open sky above me instead of being trapped in a cave with a ghost, but to each their own. Back in 1927, a man named Walter Peck discovered the caverns and the supposed caveman he found within, and was soon charging tourists $0.25 to see the remains. which turned out to be the burial remains, fairly recent, of two American Indian brothers who died there about a decade earlier, failing to return home from cutting firewood on the mountain above. They'd been buried in what seemed to be a 50-foot deep hole, but it was actually the entrance to a massive cave system, previously unknown or long forgotten. A skeleton of a giant sloth was found within the caves too, one of the same giant sloths who roamed the southwest deserts when it was greener and cooler, along with the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed cats we know from the La Brea tar pits and the old natural history books with the beautiful color plate illustrations. Remember those? During the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, these caves were designated as the fallout shelter for thousands of people in northern Arizona. They say the supplies of food, water, medicine, and other essentials are apparently still stored within the cave system. Maybe we should check the expiration dates on that stuff. And just beyond that, on Route 66, it's picturesque Peach Springs, Arizona. If you have kids of your own or were yourself a kid in recent decades, you might know this place as Radiator Springs from the animated movie Cars. All around you is the ancient land of the Yavapai and the modern-day Yavapai Reservation. You can see the semi-trucks passing by on the highway not far from the Allen's property. This is if you look at the news segment posted on Channel 12 from Phoenix. Interstate 40 and Route 66 separate after meeting in that little town. And then it's box canyons and broad mesas rising up. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add together right. So I thought I'd take a look at the area, because often when you take a look at an area like this, well, you find things like this. Back in 2007, the following account was filed with Peter Davenport's National UFO Reporting Center. The report is titled, "A Bright Light from Nowhere." While sound asleep, bright lights shone into my eyes, causing me to roll over and go back to sleep. In the morning, I told my husband what had happened and that I must have been dreaming when he told me that he had experienced it too. The strange part about the whole thing is that this occurred on some rural land we vacation on. There is nothing for miles, no electricity, no roads. We have a building on it, but have not installed windows yet. So when we go to bed, it is totally engulfed in darkness. It is not even accessible by vehicle unless you know where you are going. How lights could penetrate the walls of the structure bright enough to awaken us is beyond me. Also, there was no engine sound, and the light came from outside the walls, not the ceiling. Peter Davenport placed a rare New Fork note after this eyewitness report, quote, "Our center has received a number of reports which are somewhat similar to this one. We have no explanation for how the phenomenon described above could occur." Peter Davenport. Just a few miles south of Scotty Dutton's ranch, where the boy turned up with the Pyrenees dog, someone filed this report a year ago this month regarding an incident from the night of April 12 of 2024. Shape, orb, color, white clear, estimated size, smaller than a planet, viewed from land, direction from viewer west, angle of elevation 90, Closest distance, 3,500 feet. Estimated speed, 100 miles per hour. Characteristics: lights on object, aura or haze around object, aircraft nearby. White light surrounded by fog and with no noise. We have land in the middle of nowhere. It was a very clear night, not a cloud in the sky. A couple planes had flown overhead. You can see their navigation lights. Plus, you can hear them as they pass. A plane had passed, and then coming the opposite direction came a glowing white light or orb surrounded by a fog-like substance. It passed right over our heads, had no noise, and was flying lower than the planes do. We watched for 30 to 45 seconds, and it just dissipated. Here's another reported near the Anvil Rock Road exit, a mile north of I-40 and close to Scotty Dunton's ranch. 7:45 p.m., September 10, 2011, lower part of Yavapai County. I lived in a trailer on my friend's property. She was working down in Gila Bend, and I was living on her property. She has 36 acres of land, and we lived in a 60 by 60 enclosed compound. I heard a noise under my trailer. So I grabbed my rifle and walked to the front of the trailer, where I saw a disc fly by me as big as the sun. It was on fire. Yellow, orange, green, blue flames around the disc, and then a long tail that was whitish. It seemed to be following the I-40 going east. It was very low, and I could see it clearly. I watched as it flew by me. It seemed to be going very slowly, but I may have been in shock because of what I was viewing. As soon as it went over the mountains, I could not see it anymore. I thought to myself, if this crashes, it is going to be very bad, like a nuclear bomb. I went back into my trailer and called my friends. Of course, they did not believe me. And another seen at 9:30 on the morning of September 21, 2007. Bright silver bar shape, no markings, moved slowly, horizontally, and suddenly vanished. I happened to look up into a clear blue sky as I stepped outside our house and saw a silver bar-shaped object moving slowly from the northeast to the south, but it made no sound. I watched it for a few seconds, and then I grabbed my binoculars from inside the house, and the object was still there, moving horizontally but slowly for approximately 3 minutes. Viewing through my 7x35 glasses, it was about 3 inches long and about 1 inch thick. It made no sound, but seemed like it was a half mile or so away, 2,500 feet, and maybe 1,000 feet higher than where I stood. We are at 5,000 feet elevation. And then it just disappeared without moving. I had a clear view of it, just a silver bar shape with no wings, no rotors, no tail, no markings. And just instantly vanished in a clear blue sky. I never saw anything like it. I called the sheriff's department. They gave me phone numbers to report it to. And then those people gave me an FAA number, and the FAA suggested you on the internet. So here it is. The sighting was at 9:30 a.m. on 9/21/07. Here's another New Fork report from January 25, 2004. Witnessed alongside Interstate 40 east of Seligman. Mysterious red lights hover at great speeds and perform unheard of maneuvers over mountain range in northern Arizona. Myself and 2 friends were driving back home to Phoenix after a short trip to Las Vegas. We were stopping for gas when the driver of the car commented on the really bright stars that had appeared about 45 minutes before the sun was ready to set. The objects seemed to be moving. So, stuck in the back seat of a Honda Civic in the middle of the desert, I had little else to pay attention to. Within minutes, one of the objects, which was first a bright light, then a cigar shape, turned red very suddenly, and it appeared to explode. Excited, I yelled to my friends, who at first dismissed the objects as weather balloons, but who then nervously watched intently with me as the first object began to fall, while the second object, still a white light until this point, turned a bright red and appeared to hover over the mountain range adjacent to Interstate 40. The object started to do several other bizarre things, like break into a lateral acceleration that must have covered 50 miles within seconds, stop, turn colors, lift into the sky, and return to its low altitude, go in reverse immediately with rapid speed, then rocket off again. After reaching the near end of the mountain range, the view opened up, after which we were all shocked to see the object we had observed meet up with 5 to 6 more just like it. But each one was a varying intensity of red light, kind of like how closer stars are brighter versus the stars further out at nighttime. All of these objects demonstrated their agility and handling just as the first. One by one, the objects were either disappearing behind trees, hills, or poles, or literally vanishing into thin air. We saw several other objects that were clearly airplanes and helicopters during the rest of our drive, but absolutely nothing like the red lights over the mountains. We attempted to take photographs of these objects with a Kodak Max disposable camera, but the lights did not appear through the viewfinder of the camera when we were making the snapshots. Here's another, this one from outside Hackberry, Arizona, 30 miles due west from the ranch where the little boy was found, in that same wide range of mesa and mountain between the interstate and old Route 66. Filed with the National UFO Reporting Center and witnessed on March 15, 2012, approximately 9 o'clock at night. Dark circular object approximately 500 feet across with 6 bright gold lights an equal distance apart. Quote, it was hovering about 50 feet off the ground just above the trees, about 1,000 feet in front of us. As we topped the hill on the road only 500 feet from the gate to our house, my husband slammed on the brakes and started backing up. He stopped the truck and we just sat there and looked at it. After about a minute, the lights turned off and it just disappeared. We live in a remote area with no other houses, no electricity, no phones, no lights of any kind. This really scared us. Especially because it was so close to our home. It made no sound and it did not move, it just vanished. Well, I could keep going because there are several more intriguing experiences reported from this particular part of rural Arizona below the Grand Canyon along I-40 and Old Route 66. Reports from police officers and firemen, people camping up by Peach Springs, from tribal land and federal land and private property, lights in a formation like the famous Phoenix lights that traveled from the northwestern corner of Arizona all over Prescott and Phoenix and Tucson until they vanished over Cochise County in the Sonora, Mexico desert 2 hours later. Repeated mentions of haze, fog, or an aura surrounding these lights in the usually dry and clear Arizona desert sky. Several eyewitness reports of very bright globes of light rising from and then settling onto the canyon floors in the wilderness, frightening hunters and travel trailer campers. 2 people in Williamson Valley reported the appearance of a cloud around 9 p.m. with a trio of brilliant golden lights. Friends, there is nothing like northern Arizona when it comes to strange visions. Not just dancing in the skies, but coming right at you, right to you on the high desert land itself, these ancient lands. Canyons and mesas and mountains and lonesome dirt roads. I cannot tell you what happened to that little boy, of course. But having raised my own little boys on the desert under the great and mysterious sky and the great junipers that make such pleasant refuges for kids playing outside on a fine desert evening, this is an enchanted land. If you've listened to this radio program for a while, you've heard some similarly interesting stories of a little child vanishing when mother and father were close at hand, within earshot, within sight. And then the child is gone, and soon there's a search and rescue effort. And the local news crews arrive, and the panicked, weeping parents are seen on video. And sometimes when things go right, like they did this week, the child simply reappears. Sometimes right there where people have searched a dozen times, sometimes a little farther out. But it's very good news that 2-year-old Bodin Allen had the latter kind of outcome, that kind of resolution. Sometimes in these occurrences, the child recalls that some sort of large, hairy creature arrives to help. These stories go back millennia across many cultures and eras and are generally impossible to resolve with what we think we know about our planet, our mysterious home, our haunted planet. But this time, at least, the furry protector has been identified and even photographed. He's a 5-year-old Anatolian Pyrenees named Buford. A dog who was rewarded with a 2-pound ribeye steak by his proud owners, the Duntons. May we all someday experience the grace of such a grand creature. The soundscapes on this program are composed and performed by our own Red, Blue, Black, Silver. Makes the radio show good, doesn't it? We're at desertoracle.com. Good night from the voice of the desert.